Hello, Stephen Bulger Gallery in Toronto. We're making some short films to describe our interests in photography, and starting with that, my staff wanted me to talk about my interest in photography. So we're trying to keep these brief. I know that anything more than like 5 or 7 minutes is a bit long for this type of platform, so please bear with me as I race through some influences. So I studied photography at Ryerson as a 4-year BA, and that's when it went from being something more than just a hobby. I became fascinated in the type of work that other people was doing, because I was really only exposed to what I had seen in books and magazines and newspapers. But then I could start to study the history of photography in a more formal way, and became quite fascinated in all of the different ways that people use this medium to make some sort of personal expressive statement using camera and film technology. And one of those influences was right under my nose. At Ryerson, that there was, at the front entrance, there was this display of rear lit photographs. And it was a mixture of different types of photographs, but one of them I kept looking at, and it was really a striking photograph for me. This one. And anyway, after I think 2 or 3 months, it could have even been in the second term, that I finally was smart enough to ask someone, what is the story with those pictures? And like, especially, who took that one? And I think it was Don Snyder said, "Oh, that's Dave Heath." And I said, "Well, who's Dave Heath?" And he was like, "Well, he's a teacher here. His office is like right over there." And there was a sign on the door with office hours, and I wasn't supposed to have him till 3rd year, but there was some empty space, so I wrote my name down, and that meeting began my mentorship with Dave, someone that I enjoyed hearing perspectives from. And for me, he was a very good teacher. And as I mentioned, amongst other things, he introduced me to Wright Morris. And I'll show you one of Wright Morris's photographs. And this is a photograph, the vintage print of which the gallery displayed in our very first exhibition. Unfortunately, I sold it. That is my job, but I do enjoy keeping these things as long as possible. And this photograph is somewhat emblematic of something that Wright Morris said, and he was also a writer and a novelist, so words came to him quite easily, I think. And one reason why his photographs are so descriptive, he initially started taking them as source material for books that he wanted to write, and but the photographs themselves were just so darn good. And he one time said that he thought that a photograph was the best at capturing something that was going, but not quite gone. And that idea of photography as being this preservation of memory is something that I hold very dear, and I think is a very important attribute to photographs. So I tend to like photographs that are very descriptive, that are have some narrative to it, eventually become these historical artifacts, these matters of record. And one huge matter of record, and I won't go into the book because there's just so many great pictures here, but Berenice Abbott, this was a large commission she did within the boroughs of New York, showing how this city was changing so quickly. And for me, they're very factual pictures, but very beautiful. She was a great architectural photographer. You can really feel the weight of these buildings, especially the way that she used light and different vantage points. Just amazing work. The person that really influenced me in terms of thinking about the street as theater, and how we use photographs to really peer in on different moments, from life as it's happening, is Helen Levitt. Working around the same time as Berenice Abbott, I'll show you this photograph. And again, I could show you many more. But what a wonderful and tragic photograph. I mean, the boy is laughing hysterically and the girl is crying hysterically. And there's so much in there about, you know, the trials and tribulations of the life that we live in. I mean, it's all right there in a photograph. And it's like this little performance, and she would liken her photographs to performances that, as you probably know, that there's a shutter in a camera, and the shutter protects the film inside the camera from light until you're ready to expose it, and then boom, like the shutter goes up and down, you know, in a split second, like a 125th or 1/250th of a second. And for Levitt, that was quite similar to a theatrical performance where the curtain goes up, the performance happens until the curtain comes down and the performance ends. And that's a photograph. And that concept was something that was remarkable to me. For me, that was a much more humanistic and empathetic way of thinking about how these people in photographs are being used, like, which is an essay that Susan Sontag did that's quite influential and well worth reading. She also, Helen Levitt, did it in color later on after having a foray into documentary films. I'd recommend you look at all her films and all her photographs. And the same with Kertész, that one thing that I find remarkable about Kertész is that although many photographers have these great creative bursts for 5 or 10 years, Kertész was making interesting photographs over a 70-year period, which is remarkable. And this, I think, is a good book. It's all like a great survey of his work. It also has little snippets of writing, and you look at these two pictures, and a lot of it's about perspective. And here he says, I like high shots. If you are on the same level, you lose many things. But there are many wonderful things between you and the horizon when you're high up. So I climbed up church towers and mountains. That concept is something that you can think about more than just literally when you're photographing. In terms of color, as I think I said earlier, that I was interested in color. That's what my work was. And certainly people like Eggleston was sort of like a wow, like look at these great colors and how he composes with them. But someone that I think really brought it into like perfection is Alex Webb, a Magnum photographer. And just look at that picture. I mean, unbelievable. You know, it's got so many attributes of color theory in a split second, and you've also got the drama of the three figures, you know, the composition of form and color. I don't think you can do much better than a picture like this. And that's another thing that, you know, I wasn't there, but I am through this photograph, and I use photographs to tell me about the world that we live in. And I admire photographers that take me to places that I haven't been or I can't go, either because it happened a long time ago, or it's from a country I've never been to, or maybe a situation that I personally wouldn't feel comfortable in. But here I can sit in a chair and look at the world through someone else's lens and at least learn a little bit about their truth, because it is a very subjective medium. So, you know, at best, a photographer is only showing you what they want to show us and what they believe to be true. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt, which is true in everything. But I do think that photographs can teach us about the world we live in and about ourselves. Thank you, and until next time.